If there's one thing I'm certain of, it's that we all have some bad habits in our lives. I know I do. But bad habits aren't just limited to the areas we typically think of, like diet, fitness, and relationships. They can also develop in unexpected places. For most of my life, I thought of video games as an escape, an activity I could engage in mindlessly as a way to detach from the rest of the world. But as I've come to realize, that is far from the ideal way to enjoy games. Just like with anything else in life, mindless behavior toward video games risks the formation of bad habits. And in this video, I want to shine light on 10 of those habits that I've personally struggled with over the last couple decades. Often, these habits can go completely unnoticed, slowly sapping the fun from an activity we used to find enjoyment in. It's my hope that this video can help you identify some of your own tendencies when it comes to gaming, because the first step to kicking a bad habit is figuring out that it exists at all. Before we jump into the list, I do want to quickly talk about where bad habits come from. The simplest explanation is that they form because our brains prioritize immediate rewards over long-term benefits, which are often less tangible and therefore difficult to quantify. This short-term bias makes it really tempting for us to repeat behaviors that feel good or avoid pain in the moment, even if they're not constructive for us in the long run. In Atomic Habits, James Clear defines this as the cue, craving, response, reward loop. To put it in gamer terms, imagine this loop for save scumming. The cue for that behavior would be approaching any potential conflict, decision, or risky situation. The craving is the desire for safety and control within that situation. The response to that craving would be deciding to open up the menu and quick save. And finally, the reward is the immediate relief you feel from knowing that your actions now have no permanent consequences. If you need to, you can simply reload that save and try again for your desired outcome. Although save scumming rewards you with relief in the moment, over the long term, you may miss out on a lot of the tension that makes games exciting to play. All right, now that we have a little background on how these habits form, let's look at the ones that have given me the most trouble so far in my gaming career. Number 1, juggling too many games at once. I'm a firm believer that we're living in a golden age of video games right now. There are literally thousands of amazing titles accessible in an instant thanks to the magic of the internet, which is great, but it's also f***ed. If you find it difficult to stay committed to a single game at a time, you are not alone, my friend. I've struggled with this on and off for a long time, and it's only become more difficult as I've accumulated more consoles and enrolled in more subscription services. I talked about this in my very first video on the channel, but I believe that our best chance to find satisfaction in games is to commit to them, unless they give us a legitimate reason not to. Whenever I've tried to rotate between 3 or 4 or 5 different games without fully committing myself to any of them, it's left me feeling unfulfilled. Not only does it require a lot of energy to decide which of those I'm going to play on any given night, but it also makes it tough to get in the groove with any of them. If limiting yourself to a single game at a time is a terrifying thought for you, at least consider compartmentalizing your play into explicit settings or moods. For instance, it's much easier to sustain one multiplayer game, one travel game, and one primary single-player game at a time, compared to 3 70-plus hour RPGs that you're trying to play all at once. I won't lie to you and say it's easy to maintain this kind of discipline, but if you try it for yourself, I think you'll come to the same conclusion that I have. Number 2, not knowing when to put a game down. In the last habit, we talked about commitment being a key ingredient to finding satisfaction in games. This is the other side to that coin. Commitment can go too far, to the point where you fail to realize that spending more time with a game is actually causing more harm than good. I fell victim to this when I was playing through Tales of Arise a few years ago. I thought this was a good game overall, but like many JRPGs, the combat was starting to get pretty repetitive as I neared hour 40, 50, 60. That was just too much Tales of Arise for me. But after putting that much time in, I did want to see how the story played out in the end. So I put my head down and trudged through the last 20 hours. Looking back on that experience, I should have stopped playing as soon as the game started to consistently feel like a chore. I could have easily watched the last few cutscenes on YouTube, and I would have saved myself almost 2 weeks of mostly disinterested gaming. Not every game deserves to be finished, and that assessment has to come from you personally. You are the only one who can decide when it's time to move on. So keep an open mind and remember that your time spent with the game already is 100% a sunk cost. So you should never consider that time in your decision about whether to keep playing. Number 3, expecting to win everything on the first try. In any game with challenging bosses, tactical battles, or head-scratching puzzles, there's often a temptation for us to set expectations for our future performance within the very first couple hours of the experience. The problem with that is most games have a difficulty curve that continues to slope up over time. In other words, the beginning of the game is usually the easiest part. Despite knowing this, I can't count the number of times I've gotten irrationally frustrated after the first so-called skill check in a game, and I know I'm not the only one. When you start a game effortlessly defeating every enemy or clearing stages with perfect execution, that first difficulty spike is like a shock to the system. In the moment, it can feel a little crappy to realize that you are not, in fact, infallible. But the mistake I've often made is letting the frustration of that defeat linger. This is especially problematic because the entire premise of many fantastic games is learning through defeat. Instead, you should welcome the opportunity to develop mastery over a challenging situation, because overcoming something that first seemed impossible is one of the greatest payoffs in gaming. Number 4, not experimenting with different playstyles. We all have our comfort zones when it comes to games. These are the character classes, weapon choices, and strategies that come most naturally to us. Maybe you tend to gravitate toward big swords over bows and knives, or you like to over-prepare for situations rather than rushing in and seeing what happens.
Do this, Leroy Dragons!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Personally, I'm a sucker for a good spell. Magic-based characters often have strong AoE potential, and I can usually cast spells while keeping some space between me and my enemies. I've played mages in a lot of different fantasy RPGs, but if I'm being objective, it's not always the most enjoyable experience. In my Elden Ring playthrough, I started with a strict intelligence build. Even by level 40 or 50, I was still just running around popping off glintstone shards at anything that moved. It was around that point I finally admitted to myself that I'd probably have more fun if I just tried a different build. This can be a daunting proposition depending on how attached you are to your playstyle. And I do have to subtract a few points from Elden Ring for making it not that accessible to players. But after tossing away the comfort of a familiar playstyle, I have not once regretted my decision to try something new. It is without a doubt the easiest way to breathe new life into a game. I do want to shout out Capcom in this segment because in my experience, they do a great job encouraging players to try different tactics in their games. Dragon's Dogma 2 has a really fluid vocation system, and the Monster Hunter series is constantly tempting you to learn a new weapon, and then inevitably spend 20 more hours optimizing a build for it. Number 5, not appreciating the beauty in games. Video games are the most dynamic form of media. They're interactive, yeah, but they're also rich with artistic beauty, and this medium gives players a unique way to engage with those elements. If you let the credits roll in a big AAA game, it's not uncommon to see hundreds or even thousands of names who contributed to that final product, with many of them responsible for parts of the game that go unrecognized and uncelebrated. A mistake I've made too many times in the past is focusing on just gameplay. I get so caught up in the mechanics, trying to win and have fun, that I completely blind myself to all the other amazing elements of the package. I've been playing through Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess recently, and let me tell you, This is a game that makes it hard for you to ignore its beauty. There are so many aesthetic flourishes that don't really serve any purpose other than to just exist and be nice to look at. Walking around the camps, changing your equipment, viewing the different models of enemies or Japanese desserts, it all makes for a wonderful context within which the mechanical elements of the game can operate. But not every game is so upfront with its presentation. So the next time you load into your favorite game, take a few minutes to just look at stuff, appreciate the art direction, the design, listen to the sounds, and immerse yourself in the music. I guarantee it will elevate your enjoyment. Number 6. Overindulging in competition. With my dominant play personality being a competitor, I have at many points in my life felt the intoxicating draw of competitive multiplayer games. There's no feeling quite like outmatching another real player. When your reflexes are dialed in and nothing can get in your way, it's hard to imagine any other gaming experience topping that. But as anyone who's played these kinds of games knows, you are signing up for a roller coaster every time you log in. With those highs, so come the lows. Even if you're performing at the peak of your skill level, these games will eventually pit you against opponents who are even better. And if you get a few of those matches in a row, it is a recipe for a spaz out. In an era when most kids these days have grown up on FPS games, the standard multiplayer experience is already at the sweatfest level. At my age, I've had to accept that I simply cannot keep up anymore. I can handle a little bit here and there, but if I overextend myself, I always end up regretting it. Number 7. Following the discourse too closely. Many of you are likely looped into the general video game discourse. Whenever new games come out or a big update ships or there's some juicy industry news, the community always has something to say about it. Usually the big content creators will put out videos with their own reactions or reviews, and often those opinions end up becoming the de facto point of view on a game. This can definitely be a positive thing if they're calling out legitimate problems or singing the praise for a lesser known title that's actually worth checking out. But if you're always looking to the discourse to make your decisions for you, there's a good chance you'll miss out on some things you may have otherwise enjoyed. As a longtime fan of the Battlefield games, I remember vividly when BF 2042 launched a few years ago, to almost universal mockery. The game was factually busted on release, with some of the jankiest graphical bugs we had seen since Cyberpunk. If I'd taken those initial impressions from the community and solidified my opinion on the game, I never would have tried it. But to DICE's credit, they did turn the game around. By the time it came to EA Play and I could download it via Game Pass Ultimate, the game was legitimately fun. Was it my ideal Battlefield game? Hell no. But I was having a great time playing the franchise again. And that's because I didn't let the discourse permanently taint my opinion of BF 2042. Number 8. Relying too much on the internet for help. Growing up, there wasn't much better than a trip to GameStop. Even if I didn't walk away with a new game, I still enjoyed browsing the shelves and checking out all the various gaming accessories and peripherals. One of the more interesting items you'd find were the so-called strategy guides for recently released games. If you're not familiar or you're too young to know what I'm talking about, these were essentially printed wikis. They were bound like a thick magazine and usually featured full-color pages about everything you might need to know in a game. Conceptually, these guides had utility, especially for younger players. I remember reading through the one for Animal Crossing on GameCube and discovering that you could plant a money bag in those shiny holes and it would sprout a f***ing money tree. There was no way my 8-year-old brain would have figured that out. And yet, I gotta wonder, what if I did? Wouldn't it have felt so much better to find that on my own? Today, with intricate fan wikis, YouTube, and Reddit, the answer to any question about a game is at our fingertips. You get stumped on a shrine in Zelda, within seconds you can find the step-by-step solution. I do believe that, just like with strategy guides, Having this information be accessible to players is a good thing. But what's not good is developing an unhealthy reliance on it. If you're immediately reaching for your phone at any point you feel lost in a game, you're completely closing yourself off to the potential for that rewarding sensation of solving the problem on your own. Without any friction, the highs of gaming become disappointingly muted. Big shout out to my friend Richie for helping me realize this one. I used to look stuff up a lot more often before he showed me his ways, and I am very thankful for that. Number 9, only playing new and popular games. The excitement of downloading a newly released game, especially one that's been hyped up by a bunch of marketers and content creators, is always thrilling. Getting to experience something at the same time as thousands of other players around the world can really make you feel connected to the community. But it's also a slippery slope. Novelty is alluring, but often fleeting. If it's the sole attribute you're seeking, you may be setting yourself up for a detrimental cycle of churning and burning through every notable release. Not only will this be taxing on your wallet, it'll deprive you of finding any real satisfaction in your games, as your mind will quickly wander from focusing on whatever you are playing to whatever is next around the corner. If this is something you struggle with, I would definitely recommend having a browse through the r/patient gamer subreddit. There are tons of great conversations there about old games, where players are finally getting around to modern classics like Dark Souls or BioShock. Thanks to that community, I recently got hooked on this game called Mobile Golf for the Game Boy Color, which was a sequel to Mario Golf that never got a Western release. It's just a fantastic, streamlined 2D golf game, and it came out 23 years ago. Old does not mean bad. Number 10, binging video games without adequate balance in your life. This one is where we get a little serious. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you spend a lot of your free time playing games, just as I do. What's critical to acknowledge about video games is that they are a highly streamlined, precisely tuned tool for delivering dopamine. This, of course, is one of the primary feel-good neurotransmitters in our brain. Dopamine drives pleasure, motivation, and reward, but it also plays a central role in addiction and compulsive behaviors. As Dr. Anna Lembke explains in her book Dopamine Nation, our brain seeks to maintain a sort of equilibrium when it comes to dopamine. If we continuously expose ourselves to potent dopamine-producing activities like gaming, the brain will actually respond by decreasing dopamine activity, which can lead to feelings of withdrawal or emptiness, often followed by cravings and increased pleasure-seeking behavior. And over the long term, chronic consumption of video games will build up a tolerance in your brain. That means you'll need more games or more stimulating games to feel that same pleasure response that you crave. To break this cycle, some form of abstinence or regulation is needed. You've probably heard of dopamine fasting, which is essentially taking an extended break from high-pleasure activities. But you could also try various forms of self-binding, as Lemke calls them, which are basically rules you set for your own consumption behavior. For example, during the week, I don't let myself play games unless I've finished all my important tasks for the day, which usually includes making dinner, exercising, working on my next video, and other admin stuff. This self-binding strategy helps me maintain a strong level of motivation throughout the day because I use gaming as my reward for accomplishing tasks. And that balance ensures that the dopamine spike from gaming continues to feel good. For those of you who are really struggling with this, I would strongly recommend checking out Dopamine Nation, which I've linked down in the video description. There's a ton more great insight from Dr. Lemke that I just can't fit into this video. And there we have it, 10 bad gaming habits. As I mentioned at the top, these are all things I've struggled with in the past or continue to struggle with today. So just remember, if any of these 10 felt especially targeted toward you, you are most certainly not alone. I do sincerely hope that I was able to bring awareness to some of these habits that can easily fly under the radar. At the end of the day, I want everyone to be able to get the most enjoyment out of gaming. So let me know in the comments, what gaming habits do you struggle with? Do you have any strategies or suggestions that might be able to help out other players? Based on what I couldn't cram into this video, I'm pretty sure there will be a part 2 at some point, so I'll definitely keep an eye in the comments for your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you learned something or you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like on the way out. See you guys in the next one.